Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. Today we discuss yet another topic in the schedule management knowledge area space, which is the calculation of early start, early finish, late start, late finish. This is a very important video and we will see a calculation example as well during the end of the video. So watch this video till the end. But first, let's get the basics right. A quick notification here, treat this as a warning. This topic is very important from PMP exam perspective. And you should definitely expect a question or two based on the calculations of early start and early finish and late start and late finish. So before we start, I'd like to confirm that you already know what network diagrams are. You already know what critical path is and how to calculate the critical path, and you already know what float or slack is and how to calculate float or slack. Second link in the description is going to take you to the entire playlist, which will teach you all about these three topics. These three topics are a must know before you proceed further with this video. One more time, I'd like to remind you that we always have related articles on the videos that we post on pmclounge.com. So first link in the description is going to take you to an article on this very topic, this video itself. So if you are into reading articles, if you would rather read than watch a video, then first link in the description and second link in the description to learn about these three topics. These are must know topics before you proceed further with this video. So float, you already know that it is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without impacting the project end date. So you already know that from the float video that we did. Now, the early start, early finish, late start, late finish, these are the numbers that are actually going to show you how much freedom you really have. And what do I mean by that? You'll understand that further in the example when we calculate early start, early finish, late start, late finish. But just understand the fact that these numbers are going to show you what freedom you really have within your activities. A quick notification before we move further. If you're looking for PMP book recommendations for preparation, head over to pmclounge.com/resources. A quick definition, which should be obvious. Early start basically means the earliest time that an activity can start. Early finish means the earliest time that an activity can finish. So obviously late start and late finish also means something around along the same lines. Latest time that an activity can start is late start, and the latest time that an activity can finish is late finish. Now, before we move further, I'd like to remind you about an important point. The boxes that you see here, the activities, activity F, A, B, when you are dealing with a question or a network diagram with that has all the values of early start, early finish, it is going to be represented like this, right? So it will have four numbers and each of these boxes, right, will be represented like this. So don't be surprised if you see a network diagram that has, let's say, the activity G and it has some numbers written on all four corners and then another number written in the middle, which is the float value, right? So don't be scared of that. That is also a network diagram. This is also a network diagram, and a network diagram with activities that has numbers and values and has boxes like this is also a network diagram. Now this is supposed to be the most important part of this video. This is where we calculate early start, early finish, late start, late finish. What you see on your screen right now, this is a network diagram. S being the starting point and E being the ending point, right? So this is the network diagram and all these activities, the activities that you see A, B, C, right? All these activities are being represented in the representation that we saw in the previous video, right? It will have four numbers: early start, late start, early finish, late finish, and one number in the middle, which will be the floats, right? So all the activities that you see on this slide will be represented in this fashion, right? Now, the number that you see above each activity, here you see 4, this is the duration for that activity. So just like how we did calculate the critical path in our previous video on critical path, we simply go ahead and find out all the paths, and we add all the durations of those paths, the activities on those paths, and we are able to find the critical path. So these are the 4 paths that we have in this network diagram: A, B, C, G, A, B, F, G, D, E, F, G, and D, H, I. So these are the 4 paths. Once you add the values of duration of all the activities like A, B, C, G, which means 4, 3, 1, and 2, you get the sum as 10. So similarly, when you get the addition, the sum for all 4 paths, you find out that DEFG is the critical path because that has the highest value. So the project is ending on 17 unit of time. It could mean 17 months, it could mean 17 days, it could mean 17 weeks, 17 hours, whatever, but 17 is the last value. DEFG activity is on the critical path that is going to take the most amount of time, the longest activity, the activity which cannot be delayed, the activity with the float of 0. Remember our video on float calculation, right? So now to calculate early start, early finish, late start, late finish, we do something which is known as forward pass and backward pass. So for forward pass, we start off with the critical path, which is DEFG, and we start off doing a forward pass of the critical path, right? So we start with activity D. What should be the early start for activity D? That is the first activity. The early start should be 0, right? That is when you are going to start with activity D. Now, the duration is 5 for this activity, which means the early start is 0, but the early finish is going to be 5 because the duration itself for this activity is 5. Right? So this is how we are going to move forward, and we will calculate early start and early finish for all the critical path activities first. So we are done with D. DEFG is our critical path. So let's move to activity E now. So E, when can it start? It can start only after D is done. So it can start on 5, right? 5 was when D ended. 5 is when E can start. And it'll end at 9 because the duration is 4, right? So 5 plus 4 is equals to 9. So it will end at 9. Similarly, we go further on the critical path activity of F. It starts at 9. The duration is 6. So it ends at 15. The early finish is 15. Final activity on the critical path is activity G, which starts at 15, has a duration of 2, so ends at 17. So this is how early start and early finish can be calculated with forward pass. So we started off with DEFG. Now let's look at the second longest path in this network diagram, which is ABFG. So let's begin with A. A is the first activity, so of course it can start at 0. Then it has a duration of 4, so the early finish is going to be 4. Similarly, B starts at 4, has a duration of 3, so ends at 7. And ABFG is what we are dealing with here, right? So don't go and calculate C right now. ABFG. F, if you see, is already calculated in the critical path itself. So the activities which are already calculated need not be calculated again. So if you see, the path ABFG is done because F and G both were calculated in the critical path forward pass itself. So we are done with A, B, F, G. Next, longest path is D, H, and I. So D begins with 0 and ends at 5. We already calculated this in the critical path. So let's move ahead and talk about H. H can begin at 5. It has a duration of 4. So H ends at 9. Similarly, I begins at 9 and ends at 11. Right? So we are done with DHI, and finally we have ABCG. So in ABCG, you'll see that activity A and B already have the early start and early finish calculated. C can begin at 7, right? Because B was ending at 7. So C begins at 7, has a duration of 1, so ends at 8. And then G is already calculated, so we will not touch it again. So you have the early start and early finish for all the activities in this network diagram. Now for late start and late finish, we will do a backward pass. So we start off with the critical activity, the critical path activities again. We start off with D, E, F, G, and we do a backward pass, which means we look at activity G the first, right? So G activity, the end of the project is on the 17th unit of time, which could mean 17 hours, 17 days, 17 weeks, 17 months, whatever. The latest finish for activity G should be 17 because that is when the project is ending, right? So late finish will enter as 17, and then the duration is 2, so we'll subtract 2 from 17 and we'll get 15, right? Let's move to activity F now in the critical path of DEFG. When should be the late finish? We carry over the late start and we enter that value here in F. So the late finish for activity F should be 15. The duration is 6. So the late start should be 9. Similarly, E will have a late finish of 9, have a late start of 5, and D will have a late finish of 5 and late start of 0. Now, all these values for critical path activities are the same, right? Early start and late start is the same. Early finish and late finish is the same. Why so? Because these are critical path activities. Remember, critical path activities cannot be delayed. So that is the reason why DEFG have these activities have the same early start and late start. You cannot delay these activities. Let's look at the second longest path, which is ABFG, and let's do a backward pass of ABFG. Again, G already has all the values. You don't have to calculate anything. Let's go to F. So if you go to F, it is already calculated. You don't have to do anything. Let's go to B. So B doesn't have a late finish or late start here. So what do? We carry over the late start of F and we enter the value as the late finish for B here. So we get 9 here. The duration is 3. So the late start will be 6. Then similarly for A, the late finish is going to be 6 and late start, since the duration is 4. So subtracting 4, we get 2. So this is the late start for A. Now let's move on to another activity, the third largest, the third longest activity, which is DHI. So for DH and I, let's start with I. What do we put here? Do we put 11 here or do we put 17 here? Of course, we'll put 17 because that is the latest by when the project should end. So that is the latest by when the last activity should finish. So late finish for activity I is going to be 17. The duration is 2, so you got 15 here. Then for H, you carry over 15. The late finish for the late start for the previous activity is going to be the late finish for this one. So 15 here, and the duration is 4, so you've got 11. Now D, we already have it calculated, so we don't touch it. Now the last activity is the last path is ABCG. A, if you see A, B, these are already calculated. C, G is already calculated. The only activity pending here to calculate late start and late finish is C. So what do? We are doing backward pass. So we'll start with G is already calculated. Come over to C, the late finish for C will be the late start for G. So the value that for late finish for C is going to be 15. The duration is 1. So subtracting that, the late start is going to be 14. So as you can see right now, we have late start, late finish, early start, early finish calculated for all the activities in this network diagram. We first did forward pass and then we did backward pass, right? Now, to calculate float, the formula of float is late start minus early start or late finish minus early finish. There are two formulae, but remember that both these formulae should give you the same result. So let's start by calculating it for our critical path activity D, E, F, G. Starting off with D, you subtract the late start. What is late start? Late start is 0. You subtract that with early start. Early start is also 0. So the value of float is 0, right? If you similarly subtract the late finish of 5 with the early finish of 5, you'll still get 0. So the float for activity D is 0. Similarly, float for other activities on the critical path D, E, F, G is going to be 0 because there is no free time for these activities. These activities are on critical path. They cannot be delayed, right? Now, if you calculate further, you'll find out the float for other activities as well. You are simply subtracting late start and early start or late finish and early finish. Both of these should give you the same answer for float. If you are not getting same answers, that means you have done some mistake either in the forward pass or in the backward pass. So that's how you kind of do a check whether you have calculated the late start, late finish, early start, early finish correctly or not, right? So this is how the network diagram looks like once you have calculated the float, late start, you have calculated the float, the late start, the early start, the late finish, the early finish, the classic way of representing each activity with 5 numbers, as you can see here, right? So this is how the network diagram looks like. Now, why is this helpful, right? I'll tell you why it is helpful. So activity D, you already know that this is a critical path activity. So you need to start at 0. You have to finish at 5. This is a critical path activity. It cannot be delayed. Activity H has an early start of 5, but has a late start of 11. What does this mean? This means you need not start with activity H on fifth day or the fifth week. You can wait till 11 to start for activity H because this activity is not on critical path. This activity can wait. The late start is 11. The early start, of course, is 5. That is where D was ending, but late start is 11, which means you this is not something which is urgent. This activity is not something that you should be putting all your efforts into. This activity can wait. So to understand this dynamic of the schedule of the project schedule, it is very important that the project manager knows the early start, early finish, late start, late finish for every single activity in his or her project. So this is how you calculate everything. You calculate all the values. Like I said earlier in this video, you can definitely expect a question or two around the calculations of early start, early finish, late start, or late finish in your PMP exam. Otherwise, from real world perspective as well, you have softwares that are going to do this for you, but you should at least know how it works. You should at least know how these values are calculated. So that's all that we had in this video. Hope this was helpful. Hope you were able to follow and understand the calculation of early start, early finish, late start, late finish. This is one of the most important topics from the PMP exam perspectives, because you can definitely expect questions on these topic. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. As always, don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP resource. Thank you.